at the very first place?
For example, there was a photo showing two people running in front of a military truck. That's one. And the other is some police carrying a wounded citizen. And in both cases, it was not shown for the entire picture in one case or the true picture in the other case.
Is there something left out?
In the first case, showing the two people running in front of the military truck, the real picture shows there were a bunch of them, over a dozen of them, throwing rocks at the truck. And the caption of that only says that a very heavy military involvement in the incident. In the other case, it was actually a picture of the Nepal police trying to suppress a protest in their own country, not what happened in Tibet at all. These things can happen under two circumstances. One is that the Western media has a tendency, again using the word sensationalize, pick up things that they think will incite people's excitement. And the other is, I believe, they put this news report together in a hurry. So they didn't have time to search for the whole thing or search for the truth, just pick up what is available to them.
Of course, a lot of those accusing bias reporting are saying the second reason, for example, you had, is that reasonable that they're doing this, and is that fair they're doing this, and does that kind of action should have excuse? What is your reaction if they're asking those questions?
I think news report depends heavily on credibility. As the Western media over the years have deteriorated in terms of the truth and the faithful report of events, the recent coverage of the U.S. presidential campaign is an example on how the media is trying to sensationalize the situation. And I'd rather see the viewers eventually understand and come to the realization that those medias, those stations are not trustworthy.
Of course, what you said, just to follow up, Mr. Lee, what you have been saying is Western media, it seems to be something as a whole. But I'm just wondering, once again, do you want to give a blanket kind of perception about Western media, or you think they're rather different from one another?
I think it ranked such as, in my opinion, the U.S. media number one, and British media number two, then the French media, German media, then the Italian media, then Spanish media, etc. I would not blanket them all together, saying all Western media.
So would you like to comment the question as the Western media as a whole are not telling the truth, or you think there are certain medias that are not telling the truth, especially in this case of the Lhasa riot?
I would not say that in general they are not telling the truth, but attributed to the fact that they really don't understand China.
Do you agree with that, Professor
I would
Shi?
rather classify the media as a sort of like the quality. They have some quality newspaper and quality television, and also they have some tabloid media and tabloid television. So, I mean, in the West, they believe the idea of the marketplace of ideas. So the true ideas, false ideas can actually struggle with each other. So I'm not quite surprised that this time they have different views of this incident. So I don't agree with the blanket idea of using the sort of all inclusive type of Western media. I also noticed this time, like the British media, like Guardian, also the Hong Kong-based South China Morning Post have a neutral report of what happened.
What do you mean by neutral?
And at least they have some perspective from the tourists. And I still remember one story by the Canadian tourist, how actually witnessed one Han Chinese was beaten and he saved him. So the story was published by South China Morning Post. And also the Economist, the correspondent view was published with
James
Guardian.
Miles?
Yes. So I think rather than using CNN as a kind of a symbol of Western media, we should actually judge case by case. But the idea of the professionalism and the journalist ethics should be held, notwithstanding Chinese media, Western media, U.S. media, whatever.
And what do you think, Professor Shi, because you are teaching your students about journalism ethics, about what should be the qualifications of journalists?
You should provide fact. You cannot actually, by using the excuse of meeting the deadline or causing sensationalism to make some fake stories. So you have to have their own conscience.
What about the so-called fair and balanced reporting? Do you believe something like that exists? To what extent do you think that might exist?
I think that's inevitable because everybody have their own perception, and so that's why we use the word bias rather than prejudice, because prejudice is something intentional, but bias is something unintentional. It's more unconscious. But what a correspondent can do is to check with as many sources as possible to get a more neutral and balanced story. But what this time Western story actually is accused is because they only checked one or two sources rather than check multiple sources as they believed.
There are some general questions concerning the ethics of journalism, concerning the reality of journalism. From the Iraq War, for example, a lot of media personnel, as well as those from outside the circle, has been asking whether the media are creating something that they already have a preconception on, whether the media is doing a story, is actually deciding the theme of the story before they're really doing the story. From your observation, what is the reality now?
I believe it's a combination of both that, intentional, of the editor's predetermined way of telling story, as well as the shortage of time to prepare it. Because to have a true and accurate report, it depends on how high a quality of one's research is. And when there's not enough time to do in-depth research, then they fall into the habit of reporting what you used to report in this case.
Very interesting. How about your perception on
My
this?
perception is that a responsible journalist should actually base his or her judgment upon multiple perspectives. If the time is urgent, at least you don't kind of misguide your reader. At least you just tell the reader what you actually understand, but don't use intentional framing or cutting or deleting or exaggerating to misguide your reader.
And the other thing is there's always two sides of communication. One is providing, the other is receiving. There's another general question about the audience of any kind of media, whether the audience has already decided what kind of story they want to read or watch or want to look into before they really go and select the sources.
My observation is that now this is the age of kind of we call it global communication, or also the emergence of what we call grassroots journalism. So the audience actually are much more active than we actually imagine. So they have their own sources with the help of mobile phone or internet, and they also have their own professional knowledge. So this is at this point, it's not easy for a correspondent to actually give a biased story. Like this time, we have seen that netizens actually play an important role in scrutinizing journalism. So I think this is we call it audience age. The audience play a more active role in judging what is good news, what is bad news.
But then how dangerous it would be, because this was the topic during the Iraq War. People are going to different sources just to look for information that they want to read about instead of what they think might be happening. Are people really conscious of building their fair perception of what is going on? And if there's any advice that you can provide, not only for journalists and the professionals in journalism, but also for readers, watchers, audiences, what might be some of the most important things they need to bear in mind when they want to look for the truth, quote unquote?
The part in this question is that the audience must have a critical mind, that he or she must have a very conscious awareness of that the media must only providing or unbalanced stories. So he or she might go to more than one sources or more than one type of media to find out the truth by himself.
Thank you so much, gentlemen, for coming over to our show and providing your
Thank
views
you.
on that.
Thank you.
Thank you.